So this topic was requested. By the way, if you do have things you want me to talk about, let me know and I'll see if I can do that for you. But this topic is about how to behave towards a trans person, which really should be self-explanatory, but there are just some things that some people just feel like they should know so that they don't insult or embarrass or be rude accidentally towards a trans person. So I'm just going to go through the most important things really. Before I do that, I'm going to just go through some vocabulary so you understand what I'm talking about and stuff. So firstly, transgender basically means anybody who doesn't identify as the gender that they were assigned at birth. For example, a trans man would have been, such as myself, would have been assigned female at birth, and a trans woman would have been assigned male at birth. Cisgender, this basically just means not transgender. It's the opposite of transgender. Cis and trans are terms in chemistry. Some people think that it's a slur and go around saying that cis is a slur, don't call me cis, it's offensive. But it's really not a slur, it's just a term. We don't want to be saying transgender people and then normal people, because transgender people are normal people too. It's just a term to distinguish between the two. So you could say a cis man or a trans man. A cis man would have been assigned male at birth and a trans man assigned female at birth, but they're both men. Non-binary, this includes anybody whose gender identity falls in between male and female or completely removed, or they identify as both. Anything that's not a binary gender, i.e. male or female. MTF and FTM. FTM means female to male, MTF means male to female. This is referring to the direction of transition. Some people don't like it, so I wouldn't, use it to refer to everybody who's FTM or MTF, because they might not like it. Some people feel that it implies that, they were a girl or a boy before when they weren't. It's just a term to use to distinguish. But again, not everybody likes it. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about pronouns and names. Basically, use the pronouns that that person has asked you to use. If you're not sure, ask them. I'm sure they won't be offended, it's fine. It's better than just assuming and then getting it wrong. Sometimes a trans person might ask you to use the pronouns that they use for the gender assigned at birth if they're in the closet still, so that you don't out them, and that's absolutely fine. Just make sure that you are using the ones that they want you to use. Don't say that you're gonna call them the right pronouns only after they've had X done, because that implies that they're not already what they say they are, and they are. It's just transitioning helps them to feel more comfortable in their body, or for other people to see them the way they see themselves. Whether or not they've started medical transition, or even if they're not going to medically transition, you still use the pronouns that they ask you to use. It's a matter of respect, really. If you don't use the correct pronouns that a trans person has asked you to call them, you're basically saying that you think you know them better than they know themselves, or that you don't respect them enough or their identity to call them what they want you to call them, which is just not very nice, really. One of the issues of using the wrong pronouns is the fact that not only you could be causing them quite bad dysphoria, also that if you call them the wrong pronouns in public, you could be outing them, and that could be very embarrassing. It could make them self-conscious, or it could even put them in danger, because you don't know who's around. Same with names. Call them the name they ask you to call them. Don't dead name them, because it's just not nice. Dead naming means calling someone the name that they had before. It's not a nice thing to do, and it's being disrespectful in the same way that using the wrong pronouns is. Just don't do it. So moving on to terms, transgender and trans, they're perfectly fine to use, as long as that person identifies with that word. It is an adjective, which basically means it's descriptive, it's not a noun, it's not the name of something. So basically, transgendered is not a word. Similarly, don't say, oh, I know a transgender, because that would be using it as a noun, and it's not a noun, and it's kind of dehumanizing in a way, because when we're not transgenders, we're trans people. We are people, first and foremost. The following words are slurs and should never ever be used by somebody who is not trans, or someone who is trans and is grouping a bunch of people together, because these are slurs and they offend people. They're very offensive and have very violent connotations, and they should only be used if you know that somebody identifies with that word, and it's fine if they do, but most people do not, so just don't use it to groups of trans people, or a trans person who you don't know identifies with these words, because they are bad. The words are tranny, she-male, he-she, and also the pronoun it. Unless somebody has told you that they like the pronoun it, and I don't think many people do, don't use it. It's so dehumanizing. Just don't. When I've been called things in the past, using the pronoun it for me has been one of the most upsetting things. That's me. I don't know if it's not going to be the same for everybody, but it just, yeah. You shouldn't use these words. In the same way you shouldn't use the N-word unless you are black and identify with that word. You also shouldn't say, oh my god, they want to be a boy or girl. Because we don't want to be a boy or a girl, we are a boy or a girl. For me, I don't want to be a boy, I am a boy, and that's that. Regardless of what's in my pants, I am a boy, because I say I am. So don't say they want to be this or they want to be that, because it's just, no, it's disrespecting their right to self-identify. If you're talking about somebody at a point in time before they transitioned, please don't say, oh, when he was a girl or when she was a boy, because for a lot of us we don't think we were ever these things. Some people do, but not everybody. It's better to say before they transitioned. And if you're talking about someone, like the past tense, if you're talking about something that happened in the past involving a trans person, even if at that time they used, the pronouns of their assigned gender at birth, you still use the pronouns that they use now, because that's just who they are. You don't need to say the other pronouns just because that's what they used at the time. It can be quite triggering of dysphoria if someone does that. It's much easier to, you can just say their current name, the name that they have now, and the pronouns that they use now, and not what they used to use, because it's just easy, and it's a lot less confusing for other people as well. The terms AFAB and AMAB basically mean assigned female at birth and assigned male at birth, and you use these terms instead of born a boy or born a girl. And it makes me laugh, really, when people say this person was born a man or born a woman. Because no, I don't know about them, but I was born a baby, and I'm pretty sure everybody was born a baby. We were assigned these genders, it doesn't mean we were these genders. And also, no one was born a man or a woman, because we were born babies. The last one for terms is the surgery. There is no one surgery. There's no definitive surgery to have if you're trans. Sexuality. Sexuality is not the same as gender. It is completely unrelated, separate, because a lot of people think that if you're transgender, you're just super gay. And it's like the step up from gay, and it's just no. There are trans people who are gay, there are trans people who are straight, there are trans people who are asexual, bisexual, pansexual. You know, it's just, it doesn't have the same meaning. I think the best way it can be said in the most simplest of terms, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm gonna quote a character from Glee, Sheldon Beast, who in the last series transitioned to be a man, and he said, "It's not who you go to bed with, it's who you go to bed as," and that's 100% right. Glee did well with that. If you're a trans man, you don't want to be like you don't want to go to bed with a woman as a woman. You'd want, if you were attracted to women, you'd want to go to bed as a man with a woman. So that's basically what that means, because there are lots of straight trans men, and straight trans men are into women because they are men. Things you should not ask under any circumstances. Why can't you just be gay? Like I just said, sexuality and gender are not the same thing. They are separate from each other. What's your real name? Their real name is the name that they said they are called. That is their real name. Just because they changed it in the past does not mean that it's not their real name. It is their legal name. And it just goes back to the whole do not dead name people. Like, you have no right to know their name, their previous name, unless they want you to know it, and they probably don't. Just be respectful. What's in your pants though? This is irrelevant to you unless you are wanting to have sex with them. The genital area is a private area, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't ask a random cisgender person what is in their pants. So why do you think you have the right to ask a trans person? This is the question. You don't. It's, you know, it's rude. That's all there is to it, it's rude. Once again, that have you had the surgery question. It's not a matter of the surgery that you can have to transition. It's just not the case. That's all there is to that one. How do you have sex? Once again, it's another completely private question. It's only relevant if you want to have sex with them, and if you're just randomly asking them this question, they're probably not going to be going to bed with you. You don't need to know how they have sex. And also, it's kind of a strange question to ask when there are many ways to have sex. Between anybody who is cis or trans or anything, there's many ways to have sex, and it's a private thing, and you know, trans people have sex just like any other person who is not trans. Things to not say. Wow, I'd never know. But you're so pretty, or you're so handsome. These may sound like compliments in your mind, but they're really not. What they are saying is that this trans person, it's surprising that they're attractive to you because you don't think trans people are attractive or can be attractive, or congratulating a trans person on passing as cisgender as if, that makes them, you're like, oh my god, I would never know that you're trans, like, wow. It's, it implies that transgender people are inherently unattractive and undesirable, or, you could spot a trans person from a mile off, which is just not the case at all. There are so many trans people who pass. When I say pass, I mean you look at them and you would not know they were trans. They would, for example, a trans man who passes would be someone who is gendered as male just by people, passers by who don't know them and stuff like that. It's saying that if a trans person doesn't pass, they're somehow worthless. You'll always be X to me. This is a difficult one to hear, especially when it's someone close to you, like a family member, who are saying, I've known you since you were a baby. I've always known you as this. For example, if it was me, it'd be, I've always known you as a girl. You'll always be a girl to me, no matter what you do. That really hurts, and it's just not something that we want to hear, or that you should say. Even if you think at that moment that it's true, don't say it. For all you know, you could come to terms with it eventually, and respect that trans person and call them what they want you to call them. But even if you don't and don't have any plans to do this, it's just such an awful thing to say. It's so invalidating, and it's not nice. This is just a phase. You're just confused. While this may well be true, why is it something that needs to be said? For some people it is a phase, questioning their gender, but for most people it's not. And even for those people who it is a phase for, that doesn't make it any less valid or important, because there are so many phases that everybody goes through in life, and phases make up your life, and they're still important. They shape you as you're growing, and if you go through a phase, that doesn't mean what you went through during that time wasn't important or wasn't just as valid as something that's long running. And also, besides that, you say that you're invalidating somebody's identity, and in all likelihood what you're talking to this person, if they've been able to pluck up the courage and tell you, it's probably taken them a long time to do so. It's probably taken a lot of courage, and if that's the case, then it's surely not a phase. That tells you that it's not a phase because they've told you about it, and that takes a lot. How do you think this makes me feel? You shouldn't make someone being trans about you. Yes, it may affect your life, it may be difficult for you at first, but don't make a trans person feel guilty for being trans, because they can't help it. It's not a choice, it's a medical condition. Gender dysphoria is a medical condition, and somebody cannot help having it. If you don't have gender dysphoria and you identify as trans, personally I don't understand that, but if you do, whatever, that person still probably does not feel like they can be their assigned gender at birth. And making it about you and making the trans person feel guilty for being themselves takes a toll, and it can make them feel so guilty and so bad about themselves, and it can lead to awful things, really. So just please don't do it. I know if you know someone who's trans, who's close to you, and you've known them for a long time, and I know it's going to be very difficult, and I know it's going to be a struggle, but please don't make it about you. Talk to the trans person, that's fine. Let them know your concerns and worries, but don't make them feel guilty, because they're not doing it to hurt you. They're transitioning to make themselves not be in pain anymore. Don't out somebody without their permission, without their express permission, because it could put them in danger, and it could also just be all around difficult. There might be some people that the trans person does not want them to know they are trans, or the trans person may be stealth altogether in life, and you only know because you knew them before, or you were close to them, and you are now. Just don't do it, because you don't know if they want. If they tell you to tell someone, go for it, but just don't do it without their permission. It's fine to ask questions, but before you do, just think, do I need to know the answer to this question, or am I just curious? Do I want to know this question about this trans person specifically, or do I want to know the general answer for more trans people in general? And is this question respectful? Is this question going to insult the trans person? These are important questions that you should ask yourself before asking the trans person anything about them being trans. Another one to consider is, would you ask this to a cisgender person? If the answer is no, it still could be an okay question to ask. It just depends, and some people will be more accepting of questions than others. Some people might not want to talk about it at all, so you make sure you ask if it's okay first, and don't pressure them into feeling that they have to answer your questions, because they can't be a walking dictionary wherever they go all the time. It just gets tiring. They are not your Google. You can find the answer to your question most likely on Google. YouTube is a great source, as well as Google, because there are so many trans people on here documenting their lives and answering questions. They're here for you, and their videos will be a great source of information, and you don't have to ask somebody these questions because they're already on YouTube, and that's really great. YouTube is, I think, in my opinion, YouTube is the best place to go to find information about trans people. Most of all, it's important to not worry, because we're just people. We're just human beings like you. We're not gonna bite your head off if you make a mistake. Don't worry if you make a mistake, if you slip up, if you use the wrong pronoun by accident. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't make a big deal about it, because just apologise and move on. It's fine. A trans person is more than likely to just accept it. It's okay if you make a mistake, as long as you didn't do it on purpose. It's fine. As long as you're making that effort to be respectful, it's fine. We understand it's difficult for people. Hell, it's difficult for us sometimes. Like, being pronounced correctly. Sometimes, if it's happened in real life, it's kind of been like a shock to my system, and it felt really weird. But I know it's what I want. But it's difficult for me to change, and it's going to be difficult for you to change the pronouns and name you use for someone you've known for a long time. But it's possible, and it will happen eventually. But don't worry if you make a mistake, because it's okay. As a group, trans people can be quite sensitive to terms, because we fought so hard to have the right terms used towards us. For example, our names and pronouns, and certain words we don't want used, that it can make us quite sensitive to it. But don't let that scare you. Once again, it's okay if you make a mistake. We won't hate you. Thank you for listening to this probably really long video. I'm sorry about that. I just had to get it all out because I didn't want to miss anything out. But yeah, thank you for watching this, if you've watched it. Thank you so much if you viewed my first video. Thank you so much if you subscribed. It feels so good to know that someone enjoyed my first video, and hopefully will continue to enjoy my videos, even if they are really far apart, which again I apologise for. Yeah, if you have any ideas for future videos, any requests you want me to talk about, go ahead and let me know. You can let me know on Tumblr, you can let me know in the comments. Please like, subscribe. I'll put my Tumblr and Twitter in the description. And yeah, thank you for watching. Oh, also, as the day I'm recording this is the 19th of July, so happy birthday, Brian May! Okay. Like, subscribe, comment. Bye! Firstly, transgender. Someone who does not identify as the birth they were assigned.